Right, so I wanted to go through all the games I played this year, or at least most of the games this year. I made two basic rules. The first one being I had to play the game for longer than 5 hours or finish the game. In terms of some games here, they were definitely less than 5 hours, but still worthy of talking about. And then the second rule being that I must have either started it this year or finished it for the first time this year. There are some games on here that I've played in the past, but never got around to finishing, but I did finish this year. So first on the list is an NX game called Power World, very well known, definitely since the Nintendo lawsuit came out. That's an entirely different topic that we're not going to get into. I personally been enjoying this game. I recently did get back into it and played it some more with a new update coming out in 3 days on recording. Who knows when I'm going to get this out. It's just a really fun creature collector game, similar to Pokemon Legends Arceus. If you like that Pokemon Legends Arceus or Pokemon in general, you'll probably enjoy this game. Has some very fun mechanics with giving your pals guns or other things they can use to help defend or attack. I really enjoyed the mix of the creature collection from Pokemon mixed with the survival aspects that come from other games. So it's just a real good combination of both. It isn't definitely the best game I played this year. There's definitely aspects I didn't like. I found the performance, at least on my mid-level computer, was a little bit weak in some places, especially when there was a lot of pals in a base. I find some of the exploration a bit tedious. I don't think there's enough teleport places on the map sometimes, especially in the early game when you want to explore. And I feel like some acquisitions of some certain rare materials, which require a lot of, like ores, are just really a pain to get and then to transfer between places. But overall, it's still a decent game, and I'm sure these will be sorted out in the future, either through updates that add stuff, or quality of life updates, or maybe they'll introduced new pals that are great for transporting. Who knows? There's a lot of potential here. It's still an early access game, but for those reasons and in terms of how much enjoyment I have, I would have to put it in a A. Next up is another survival game in early access called Enshrouded. I had a lot of fun on this game. Please do not mention my circles in this game. But I had quite a lot of fun in this game. I do want to get back to it like I have with Power World, but I haven't got around to that just yet. I'm sure there's a few updates that have been since I last played, which has been great. Similar to Power World, it has certain qualms with this game as well. One of the things I would have loved to see in this game was a randomly generated world, but didn't really get that. I found base building a bit too much of a chore, but maybe that's because I didn't really understand it at the time. Maybe things have changed since then. This is basically from the game's early access release. I really haven't played much since then, so this is a very early opinion. A lot of this could have changed, but I think the main draw I had into this game was the combat. The combat is really, the combat is pretty good in this game. I enjoyed it massively. The shroud mechanic was really fun as well. When it came into gameplay, I didn't see it too much, unfortunately, only in a few areas, but it was a decent mechanic when I got around to it, and I definitely want to get back to this game at some point. I'm happy to put it into a B, just because I haven't played it as much as Power World or some other games here, and I didn't have the most fun, but I think it definitely has the potential to go even higher once we get around to that full release. I think it's just because of the early access period, basically. My next up is the first original Tomb Raider. This image here is just the original, but I did play the remastered edition with the upgraded graphics and that sort of thing and the new control scheme. I had quite a lot of fun with this. I think my biggest complaint is towards the end it got really difficult. Tend to be how it is with older games. But I did have a lot of struggle, and then when I started Tomb Raider 2, which isn't on here because I never finished it, it kind of started off on that same hard difficulty and then just got harder. I feel like it kind of missed the mark on the difficulty, something that could have been adjusted for the remaster, but I imagine most people wanted that original authentic feel to it. But I did have quite a lot of fun with this, and I do want to get around to the sequel again at some point. I think this is a happy B as well. It wasn't like an amazing game that I'd recommend to everybody, but I didn't have a terrible time either. I think this is a solid B. I'll put it under Enshrouded for now, but maybe I'll get around to it again later. My next up is Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. This is a game I did play last year but never finished. I did finish it again early this year, which was a good experience. I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed the gameplay. It did have that kind of mid-2000s work it out for yourself sort of feel to it at some parts, but most of the time it did tell me enough to know where to go. The combat was decent enough, the story was pretty good, the world was okay. I think my biggest complaint would have to be the same I have for the sequel that's coming out later, which is there's a lot of traveling time, which some people enjoy. Personally, when you're going back and forth between multiple different areas, it's still a pain in the ass to do. But overall, I had a good time. I'm happy enough to put this an A. Because I do want to go back and replay this at some time in my own time as well and try out the different classes. Right, next up is Hatsune Miku Mega Mix, Project Diva. This was a really fun game actually. I played this as sort of a, I don't want to say joke, this was a sub-goal I made, and I played it for that reason, and I had a ton of fun with this game. I came back to it multiple times. It made me more of a Vocaloid fan. I already enjoyed some Miku songs, but this kind of really elevated that. Now I listen to quite a few more when I'm in the mood for it. So I can't really complain about the music taste or anything like that. The rhythm game is pretty unique in its own way. Instead of having like, the bars and then the notes come down, it has them all over the screen. There were some times where I'm like, oh, I got confused, but that's kind of more of a skill issue than a game issue. I wish there was more songs. I wish it was continuously updated. I wish they'd do a new one, but I do understand that the mobile edition, I've forgotten what the name, I think it's called Colourful Stage, just makes way, way, way more money, that they don't really ever want to do another one of these again because this just doesn't make enough money compared to it. But it's an S. Like, I really had so much fun with this game, and I wish I was better at it, because I played on hard a few times, but I was mostly on normal because I was not good at this game at all. Next up is another semi-joke one. Placid Plastic Duck Simulator. This is basically a game where ducks spawn into a map and they just float around. There's different ducks that have different interactions with each other, so you have like magnetic ones that can like connect to each other. There's one that sets other ducks on fire. There's some that just, instead of floating, go down to the bottom of the pool. For me, this has just been something that I've had playing at the start of streams, just to, as a starting stream sort of thing. We could just watch the ducks and have music playing while we get ready. So it's been a pretty fun experience for me. The ducks are cute. We name them weird different things. It's just been a good time with these ducks, and I can't really say anything bad about them. It's obviously something you would either have displaying on a screen while you're doing something else on the side and be like, oh, I just saw the duck do something in the corner of your eye. It's not something you really actively play. So if you're looking for something active to play, this obviously isn't for you. But if you have like a second screen, you can have them up on the second screen while you're doing work or playing a different game or whatever. It's a pretty fun time. It's a pretty fun time, and the ducks do wild things. But as it isn't really an active game, I can't really pit it too high. Like, I feel like if I was going to be like, oh yeah, this is better than Hatsune Miku, that's obviously not going to be the case. I think a high B. I think there should be okay. Just because I basically played this for, if I have a look at my Steam library real quick, 74 hours this year. It's one of my highest ones, to be honest. There's not much more I can say. I might reorganize this at the end to pick a different place. Right, next up is Helldivers 2. This is a game that captured a lot of people very heavily. I kind of gotten into it a bit late. I do want to try it again since the new update added the new alien species, but I haven't got around to that yet. Personally, this didn't capture me as much as other people. I still had a pretty good time with this while playing with friends, but I don't think the gameplay really captured me, and I don't think it's really my sort of game. So I don't think I can say too much really about it. I think it's just something I'll play with friends, but not something I'd really play alone. But combat's good. The gameplay's fine. Had a few issues over the year, but nothing that no game really goes through, especially multiplayer games. But personally, this wasn't my thing. I'm going to put it to a C tier. Might be controversial. Right, next up is Buckshot Roulette. This is a fun little £2 game. It's not really too in-depth. You're basically playing Russian roulette with a shotgun. You get items to use to help you gain an advantage or give a disadvantage to the NPC. They did recently introduce a multiplayer mode, which I haven't got around to trying out yet myself, but I do wish to try at some point. But it is a pretty fun game. It's pretty fun to try and go for high scores. I played this a couple of times. The music's a banger, although it does get a bit repetitive. It's a short, fun experience. And if you got friends to play with, you can definitely extend how long you play this for. I know this captured some people more than it did me, but to me this was just a pretty fun experience to play for a couple of times, and that's about it, really. I'm pretty happy to put this as a low B, personally. Alright, next up is Marvel Snap. This is a game I played mostly on my own, in my own time. Did play a couple times on stream, but not too many times. I quite enjoyed this game. It's a game I got into because I enjoy card games and I hadn't really played one in a while. I kind of quit Hearthstone a few years ago, for the most part. I played Battlegrounds a couple of times, but that's besides the point. So I was really looking for a card game to really get into. And then Marvel Snap was there. I enjoy Marvel characters. I enjoy the movies and some of the TV shows, although we all know it's been a bit shaky recently, but besides the point. This was really fun to get into, but the problems did start to arise. If you know anything about Marvel Snap, you get a lot of cards really early, and then when you start to get into it, the card acquisition really starts to slow down, and you see a bunch of, decks that you want to play, but you don't have all the pieces in them, so either you can't play the deck entirely, or you have to use substitute pieces, which makes the deck significantly weaker. And this is an issue that's kind of just gotten worse and worse as the years gone on, which I found out very quickly, unfortunately. It definitely has ruined my fun over the time. I never really reached the top rank or anything. I never really grinded the game out too much because I just didn't have the cards to play the really fun decks. But I did end up playing this game for 150 hours, so I really can't say I didn't have fun. But in terms of how good it is, I have to say this is worse than Helldivers at its current stage. Maybe next year it gets better, but am I even going to be playing it next year? I don't know. I don't have the game currently installed, so I can't say. If you're looking for a card game, it's a decent option, but if you want to keep up with the card collection, expect to spend a lot of money. Right, next up is Supermarket Simulator. This is a simulator game where you're in a supermarket, basically. You own a supermarket. I had quite a lot of fun with this game. I played this on Sundays on stream, where we'd have song requests going, people would play songs, and we'd just chat and then play some, manage the supermarket. It was a pretty fun experience. The disappointing part is, of course, I found out later that it used AI. I didn't really check beforehand. I just saw people play it and I bought it without really checking. I've kind of learned my lesson and checking on if something uses AI. But in terms of how much enjoyment I had out of this, it was a pretty fun experience. Had its time, had its moment. And there's something much more to really say. This is more of something I enjoyed because I was on stream. I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much if I wasn't, with a community, chatting and playing songs, that sort of thing. But overall, it was a fun experience. I just wish it didn't use AI and instead took the effort to, make its own store page thing. I don't know where the AI in the game actually is. I don't know if it's actually used AI in the game, but because it's used that storefront AI sort of thing, you can never be too certain with these types of games. That's why I haven't played a lot of other games, like Tavern Manager Simulator uses AI on its store banner as well. I believe it uses its AI for the voices as well, so that's why I haven't got around to playing that game yet either. In terms of where to put this, I think this is a solid low B as well. This category is probably going to be pretty full. It's supposed to be the mid category, and with 40 games here, it's going to be pretty filled up. Right, next up is Dragon's Dogma 2. This is another one I played in my own time just because my computer wasn't really handling it too well during recording and streaming times. This game was notoriously known for having issues, especially in towns where there was a lot of NPCs. This turned out to be because the NPCs were thinking way too much, apparently. But overall, I had a really good time with this. I enjoyed the story. Some people complain about the story. I enjoyed the story more than the original. There was some throwbacks to the original as well, which was really cool. I found the combat a lot more engaging than the original as well. If I had to make any complaints about this game, there wasn't really any characters that really stood out and stuck in my brain. I'd struggled to really recall any. But overall, I did enjoy the story quite a bit. And as much flack as this game gets, I do believe it is better than the original, despite what some people may say. And I'm going to have to put it in A. I don't know if I'm going to put it above Power World, though, despite how much fun I had. It is tempting. We'll have a look at the end, like I've said before. And next up is TCG Card Shop Simulator. This was another fun game I played on Sundays with my community, just having fun, opening packs together, that sort of thing. This game was a lot better to me than the Supermarket Simulator game because it's something I personally enjoy a lot more. I do have some Pokemon cards around the house. I haven't really opened any in a few years, but I would love to at some point if it becomes financially able to. I found this one a lot easier to stay into as well, probably because the theme grabbed me more. And this one updated more frequently, had more quality of life than Supermarket Simulator, and overall was just a better simulator game. The only thing that might throw people off is not interested in the theme versus Supermarket Simulator, but personally I find this one a lot better in almost every aspect. So personally I have to at least put it above Supermarket Simulator, and honestly I'd probably put it the highest of B, if not into an A. Right, next up is Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the video game. This is a game I had quite a lot of fun of when it first released. I played like 10 hours over 3 days. I got pretty high level pretty quickly. This is a game that a friend recommended to me, and I ended up playing more than them. It's a game I've gone back to a couple of times, but overall I don't really play anymore. The problem with this game kind of arose after its launch, where the game wasn't really getting the updates it needed to kind of stay competitive with other games in the genre and to keep its player base. Instead, they were releasing the in-game shop and more cosmetics instead of actually focusing on balance and the fun that people were having. Quickly after this game released, people kind of realized that humans were actually stronger than the clowns, which was what's supposed to be the power role, was supposed to be the clowns, but it's actually the humans, so it was kind of really unbalanced. I don't believe that's really ever changed. When I went back to it a couple of times, the humans were still pretty much stronger than the clowns most of the time. It was too easy to escape within like the first 2-3 minutes if you got really, really lucky, which happened quite frequently actually, so calling it lucky might be an overstatement. And from what I've seen from their updates on Twitter and stuff like that, they're still just releasing cosmetics and not too many changes to the game to make it more fun to play. I imagine this game stops receiving updates within the next 6 months because it's no longer making enough money, and the whole purpose of it was just to get money out of people. I had fun with this, I got my money's worth, but it's not really a game I could recommend to pick up, and it definitely fell off the cliff really, really fast. And for that reason, I'm going to have to put it in a low C. I'm tempted to put it in D, but I did have that initial fun. It just was not realised to its potential, and now it's far too late for it to really reach that potential it had. Right, next up is Grand Theft Auto 3. This is the start of the whole Grand Theft Auto series I played over about a couple months. For clarification purposes, this was the original with some mods to make it work better on a modern PC and not the definitive edition. And because this was the original Grand Theft Auto 3, you could definitely feel like this was the first 3D Grand Theft Auto, because you could feel those kind of pains that come with going into like a new medium or a franchise. But overall, this was a pretty decent game. The story was good, the graphics held up pretty okay, the gameplay is fine. I think the biggest issue is that there is no map, so getting yourself around is pretty difficult. And some people may complain about the main character not really speaking, and there's no like sort of clapping back at the character speaking to him. He just kind of takes it and says whatever. Personally, I found this pretty okay, but definitely not my favourite GTA, that's for sure. Personally, I'm going to put this as a low B. I had fun. I'm definitely down to play it again at some point, maybe through a definitive edition, because I've heard they've gotten a lot better now, or at least serviceable now, but we'll see. My next up is Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories. I found this a lot better than 3. I found the story more interesting to me personally. The gameplay was definitely basically the same as 3, if not slightly better, because it had some quality of life stuff. I think the biggest downside here would be the fact that it had slightly worse graphics, but that's because it's technically a PSP game, and even when it was ported to the PS2, it was still a graphical downgrade. And I found the radio slightly worse, but I mean, it's a Grand Theft Auto game, the radio is still pretty decent. So yeah, I personally enjoyed this more than GTA 3. I don't think there's much to really talk about in terms of it. But I'm just going to put it just a few levels higher than GTA 3 around here. And I think that's pretty much where I want it. Alright, Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories. We finally get flying in this GTA. Technically it does come out after Vice City, but in terms of play order, this is what I played next. This is a prequel to Vice City, similar to Liberty City Stories is a prequel to 3. This was a very fun game. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Phil Collins concert at the end. That was pretty fun as well. Overall, pretty good experience. Pretty similar to Vice City. Does have a map. And I can't really complain too much about it. It has a great radio as well. It's just a pretty fun GTA experience. And I think this is better than Liberty City Stories as well. So I'm going to put it above Liberty City Stories. To continue the rush through GTA games, next up is Vice City itself. This is my favourite Grand Theft Auto of all time. I think the story is the best, I think the gameplay is the best, I think the radio is the best, I think the map's the best. I just think everything about this game is the best in Grand Theft Auto. You can have a few qualms about it. I think my biggest issue was the fact that you basically have to go through a bunch of side stories to finally get access to the last story, but those side stories are still pretty decent. But in terms of everything else, that's pretty much my only big complaint. There's like one hard mission similar to the train mission, but I honestly had a lot easier time than I did when I played this when I was a kid. I never finished it when I was a kid, I want to point that out, so still within the rules, but I did have a lot easier time than when I was a kid. So this for me, this is an S tier GTA. Next up is GTA San Andreas, my second favourite GTA game. This one's similar to Vice City, where it's just got a good story, good gameplay, has some upgrades from Vice City as well. Personally, it doesn't really have that nostalgia factor as much as Vice City does for me, which is probably one of the reasons why Vice City is probably above San Andreas for me. But overall, this is probably one of the definitive GTA games you can play. Of course, it contains the infamous train mission, which to this day still took me this year 14 tries to do. I am not good at video games. I eventually found out that you could jump on top of the train and shoot them down, which still took me a couple of tries because I kept getting knocked down in weird positions. You're not really supposed to do it, but it's kind of a glitch you can do, I think. At least that's my impression. But overall, this is a very, very good GTA game, and honestly, if it's your first GTA game, I recommend San Andreas over all the other ones, because this one is, like I said, more of a definitive experience, but the nostalgia for Vice City and the setting for Vice City is why I picked Vice City higher. This is still an S tier game though. It's undeniable. My next up is GTA 4 and the GTA 4 side stories. I've just included these all in one, really. Personally, I do enjoy GTA 4, but it kind of signals the start of GTA moving away from its sort of arcadey nature into a more gritty realism, or at least that was an attempt with GTA 4. It still has plenty of funny moments, plenty of stupid characters and that sort of thing from previous GTA games, but it does kind of try and ground itself even more in realism than some of the other games from the series. Personally, I dislike this kind of. I prefer the very arcadey nature of Vice City, San Andreas, that sort of thing. But this is still a fun experience. This is a game I did play quite a bit when I was a kid as well. Just saying it out loud sounds like, really weird, because as a kid you should not be playing this game, but I still, that's what I grew up on. Blame my parents. But overall, it's a very, very good game, but not as good as Vice City and San Andreas. So personally, I'm going to put this down as a low A, personally. And the main reason I'm going to put it down as a low A is transition into GTA 5, because I found this as a better experience than GTA 4. It's more bright, the characters are more interesting, I enjoyed the trio system to a degree. I think my biggest complaint was the fact that Franklin was sort of just there as a meld for Trevor and Michael, and if you removed him, I felt like you personally wouldn't miss him too much apart from a few places in the story. I feel like the story is mostly about Trevor and Michael and their previous experience together, with Michael, faking his death, Trevor going into hiding thinking Michael was dead and all his people he basically did the heist with were dead, that sort of thing, and his downfall of his life in a way. Franklin kind of just works as sort of a mold to kind of bring them both together again, and once he's kind of done that, he just kind of bees there when he's needed to either work as a secondary character to Michael to complain about Trevor to, or Trevor to complain about Michael to, etc, etc. And of course, for basically the final mission where you can decide either to kill Trevor or Michael or neither. Personally, I think it was very obvious that if you picked the neither option, all survived. It wasn't like Franklin would die. Personally, that's my experience, but maybe back in 2013 when this game originally came out, maybe it was less obvious that they were all going to survive, but this is just my experience. Personally, I find this better than GTA 4, like I said. I just find the setting better, the characters better, the radio better, gameplay better, just overall better. It does have a bit less nostalgia factor for me because I never finished it in 2013. I didn't play it as much as some other people, and I do feel like the game was kind of hindered by the online kind of taking off. There was obviously no story DLC where there clearly could have been, so it's kind of disappointing. And I feel like GTA 6 is probably going to go the same route, but maybe they won't leave room for a story DLC because they don't feel like it's worth doing. I'm going to put this above the Dragon Dogmas, but below Palworld personally. Right, next up is, now that we're finally done with the Grand Theft Auto, sorry about that, I did play a lot of them, is Bloodborne. This is my third Souls-like. I played Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, and then I played Bloodborne. This far outweighed both of Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2. This is definitely the best Souls game I played. I platinumed it on my PS4. Thank God I got a PS4 this year, or an old PS4. I didn't buy it new or anything, don't worry, I didn't actually pay a penny for this, luckily. But no, I got to play Bloodborne finally. I planned a bit, I really, really enjoyed it. I plan to play it through again to do a challenge run at some point as well. The bosses are really fun, really challenging. I would have to say my biggest complaint was probably the last true boss was kind of a joke, but I did kind of do it through New Game Plus. But even through New Game Plus, it was kind of still a joke. in comparison to other bosses on New Game Plus. There were some I still struggled with, whereas that last one was absolutely pathetic. And I feel like there could have been some more variation in off-arm weapons. It was basically only a few types you could get and a couple of upgrades. But overall, I had quite a lot of fun with this game. It's definitely a game I would recommend to anybody who's interested at all in Souls-like games. It's definitely a good one to start with. I haven't played Elden Ring. I know a lot of people say Elden Ring is better, but I personally haven't got around to playing it yet, so I can't really make that judgment yet. I will one day. I will one day. Personally, I think this is an S rank. I think if there wasn't one particular other game here, this would be my game of the year. I'm half tempted to put it here as sort of a honorary game of the year because this came out like 10 years ago at this point. Probably longer actually now that I think about it. But personally, I'm just going to put it in S rank. But consider it secondary game of the year if that's what you want to do. So next up is Dawn Trail for the Final Fantasy XIV. This is an expansion, not a new game. I played quite a lot of Final Fantasy XIV, and I did make a video about this, so go check that out if you have the time. It's not too long of a video. But in terms of how much I enjoyed this, I did enjoy the story more than some other people. There were a lot of complaints about the story. I did enjoy it more, but it definitely is a weaker point for the MMO. I did pick up Pictomancer. Pictomancer is my new main, so I can't really say the jobs were bad. I really enjoyed them. I even enjoyed Viper to some degree, but not as much as Pictomancer. I think the biggest complaint I have about Pictomancer is it's obviously way, way, way stronger than every other DPS in the game, and they kind of have this allergic reaction to nerfing classes for some reason. But when there is a class doing so much better than everything else, you kind of need to bring that class down, and they just seem to be refusing to do that, which is kind of upsetting to see. The new areas are really, really pretty. The new graphical upgrade that came along with the Dawn Trail expansion is really good as well. Personally, this is a pretty good expansion, despite what some people may say, but it definitely isn't the peak of Final Fantasy XIV. If you've never played Final Fantasy XIV, I do recommend it. It's got a really, really good story. For the most part, some few down parts, but nothing too bad. And it's a really good experience. If you've played World of Warcraft before, you will definitely probably enjoy the combat in this game as well. It's quite similar as well. I just wanted to get into this list because I have spent quite a bit of time on Final Fantasy XIV, especially in my own time. Personally, I'm going to put it into the B tier just because it's sort of a weaker point for the game, and I'm judging the expansion and not the entire MMO itself. So I feel like it's a fair assessment to put it in B. Definitely not the best, definitely not the worst though. My next up is Poke Road, which is a fan-made game, which is Pokemon roguelike. Basically, you start off with each region's starters, and then you try and make your way to the end of 200 levels where there's a Turnus. You can capture new Pokemon during your gameplay to use them in future runs. There's shinies, and there's like shiny levels. Being a fan game, this game wasn't perfect. I found shinies a bit too rare in some situations, like even finding a basic shiny from the games themselves didn't really bring you much luck versus their tier 3 shinies that they made themselves, but they were like super rare. They did try and negate some of this with shiny events and that sort of thing, but that's only if you continue to play the game, which I didn't for the most part. Another complaint I had was when I completed the classic mode, I suddenly lost all interest in really playing the game. I tried to play it endless, I tried more classic runs, but I really had that experience of I completed a run, I've kind of played the game now. From what I know, this game is still decently popular. There's still a dedicated community to it. If you're a fan of Pokemon and a fan of roguelikes, I definitely recommend giving it a try. Maybe you can get part of the community as well, make guides or whatever, or just, you know, enjoy the game if that's your sort of thing. I think this is definitely one of the better Pokemon games I've played in a while, including official releases. I had a lot of fun with it, despite the issues I did have with it. I didn't really mention any of the good parts, but the combat's good. The fact that they gave them different egg moves to get that weren't originally in the game, so you could have some unique abilities and some unique moves on some Pokemon to create some interesting strategies was really good as well. And I'm pretty sure the game has probably improved a lot since I last played it as well, which was quite a few months ago. For all those reasons, I am going to put it into an A tier because I did have a lot of fun with it, but I don't think I could really put it any higher, and I don't think I could put it above anything else that's currently in A tier, so it's going to go for the bottom of A tier. Alright, next up is Kingdom Hearts. This was the remix edition, and I'm going to be very controversial for this. I didn't have that much fun with this. I personally found the combat to be just a bore and a little bit frustrating. The camera really never tries to work with you. The level design was never really that great. I found most of them frustrating to play through. The story was decent, but even when it made sense, wasn't really enticing to me too much. And the main reason I played this is because I played Kingdom Hearts 2 when I was younger, and I really, really enjoyed that game. From what I know, this is kind of a common experience where Kingdom Hearts 2 is way, 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 way better than the first one. It definitely has that enticing factor of, I wonder what the fuck is going on, and if that sort of thing really brings you in, you're going to have a lot of fun with this, and trying to work out what Kingdom Hearts even is, to be honest. You could definitely tell this is the first in series. It has a lot of rough pains around the edges. A lot of these issues do get fixed in 2, as far as I'm aware, as far as I remember myself, but I personally didn't have a lot of fun with this game, playing it 20 years after it came out, even with this remastered edition. So personally, I'm putting this as a high C. I personally enjoyed it more than Helldivers 2 and these other games I had, but I didn't really stick around to do any of the side stuff too much. I kind of just got through it. I was like, okay. Right, next up is Fields of Mystria. This is an early access Stardew Valley-like farming simulator game, which I have personally enjoyed more than Stardew Valley itself, to be honest. I find the characters a lot more interesting. I find the visuals a lot more appealing. The characters were hotter. I hate to say it, but it's true. I find the mechanics work better here, and I feel like this game really just improves on every aspect of Stardew Valley, which might be controversial to say because I know there's a lot of die-hard Stardew Valley fans. If you do like Stardew Valley and you are open-minded, I definitely recommend giving this one a try. I think a lot of people have tried it. I think the biggest downfall of this game is that the fact it is early access, it doesn't have everything implemented, it doesn't have marriage implemented or anything like that. So you are still playing through this early version of the game. But I feel like once it gets to that point of being where Stardew Valley is already, I feel like it will be the better game, at least in my eyes. I got this and played it for 2 weeks straight, basically, and I didn't stop playing because I ran out of things to do. I stopped playing because I was worried that I wasn't going to play anything else for the rest of the year. But I had a lot of fun with this game, and I highly, highly recommend it. This is definitely my favourite early access game of the year, and I'm going to put it up as an S tier, which is whatever year it releases, it's going in Game of the Year, most likely, and this is like a really, really good game that year. Right, next up is Thank Goodness You're Here. This is a fun little short. It took me about 2 hours to do. I did spend another hour and a half trying to get some achievements to 100% this game afterwards, but it's about a 2-hour game. But it's really short, unfortunately, but it's really, really funny. It's basically you go to a northern British town. I don't even know what to do. I think you're supposed to be trying to sell something to the town's mayor, but you end up just helping people out around the place, and the story's absurd. There's so many funny jokes. I don't really want to spoil it too much, because it's better if you go in not hearing too many of the jokes, because like I said, it's a very short 2-hour experience. But I highly, highly recommend it. This is definitely one of my favourite indie games from this year, and it does feature Matt Berry, if you know who he is as well. I had a lot of fun with this. I wish it was longer. I hope we do get some form of, not even sequel, but something else from the studio, because I think they have a lot of potential to do short fun romps like this. But I imagine this took a long time to do, because I believe it was all hand-drawn. So a lot of pain, a lot of pain. I definitely recommend giving this a shot, even if you're like not even British. Definitely if you can find this on a sale. I think this is definitely a high A for me. I'm going to put it below Palworld just because of length, and there isn't really much replayability, but overall it is a really, really fun game. Right, next up is Our History Untold. This is a Civilization-like game. I feel like this game had a lot of potential going for it, but ended up falling quite flat on its face. One of the interesting features it kind of had was each town and construction area you made had basically sort of could make things for you that could be used to then make other things or improve other areas of your civilization. I found this really interesting. The problem with this is every time I unlocked something and then worked out how to use it, I already unlocked 2 other things that I had yet to even try to experiment with, and I felt like the progression was actually too fast. It didn't give me enough time to really work out how this sort of system worked. I really would have enjoyed something that was sort of like a civilization sort of factory going on. So you work on something in one place, it helps build something in another place, which then helps an improvement elsewhere, or helps you build a unit, or that sort of thing. And I feel like it had potential there, but it kind of fell flat in its face, and it ended up being just a nightmare to get through, be too overwhelming, and not really working out how they really wanted it to be. I thought the graphics were pretty okay, pretty standard for Civilization games these days, and it was just a pretty okay-ish game that really kind of just fell flat on its face. I think you know where this is going. D tier. It had so much potential, but really kind of didn't know what to do with it all, and kind of failed for me. Next up is Soma. This was start of the horror month. I kind of did in October to play some more horror games. I do play horror games at other times, but mostly this year was in October because the rest of the year was pretty busy. Soma was a really fun game to play. It took me about 8 hours to do. I had quite a lot of fun with it. It was quite atmospheric with a few jump scares here and there, and it kind of really tackled this topic of existential crisis, existential threat. You know, are you still the same person if your consciousness gets uploaded into a robot? And that sort of thing. Slight spoilers, that kind of happens really early on, you kind of work it out. It's a bigger spoilers down the line, trust me on that one. Personally, I found the ending to be satisfying, if that makes sense. If you know that what the ending is, that kind of makes sense. I definitely recommend giving this a try if you like horror games and atmospheric horrors, that sort of thing. The puzzles were interesting degrees. I did get stuck in a few areas, but that was okay. It was overall a pretty fun experience that I can't really fault too hard. It's definitely not my favourite horror game, but definitely a good experience that I played this year, and I think it's deserving of an A tier. The only question is where. I think I'm going to put it above GTA 4, but below Dragon's Dogma. Next up is The Cast of Frank Stone. This was a game set in the Dead by Daylight universe, made by Supermassive Games, so the people who made Until Dawn and the Dark Pictures anthology. Personally, this is the first Supermassive Games game I've ever played. That's a mouthful. And I had quite a good experience with this. I enjoyed the story. I think my biggest disappointment was when I realised, oh, all the endings are basically the same. It's just who survived and who died. And I really got around to getting all the endings, so maybe there's a couple of unique ones there, maybe a secret hidden true one. But all the endings are pretty much the same, which was kind of a disappointment. But overall, I did enjoy the experience, and I did get to play this with my community. Overall, this has just made me really want to play some more Supermassive games. Another mouthful, so I definitely want to try Until Dawn at some point. I did almost get Until Dawn, but they removed the original edition from the Steam store, which was very frustrating for the remake that most people said weren't even necessary, so I'm waiting for that to either go on sale or to get an edition on PS4 somehow. But overall, I had a fun experience with this game. It was definitely one of the top 50% games I played this year. Had more fun than some other people, but it definitely had a few of its issues. And I even enjoyed the characters for the most part, and I enjoyed hating one of the characters as well. Some characters are just made to be hated, and I think that's okay. Personally, I think I'm going to put this in a B tier. I'm just questioning where. I'm thinking above Tomb Raider. That might be controversial, but I think that's reasonable. Right, next up is Silent Hill 2. I'm not even going to talk about this game. If you know me already, if you know who I am, you know this is going right to top. This is what the whole Game of the Year thing is for me. Not seeing this nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards was a massive disappointment to me. Seeing it not win any of the awards it was nominated for was a massive disappointment to me. I love this game. It's a game that's going to hold a special place in my heart for years to come. I enjoyed the original, but when I played the original, I really didn't focus on the game as much as I should have, which is something I kind of regret after paying attention to the remake version, because holy shit, the story's amazing. The gameplay's fun. It doesn't really have anything too intricate to it. It's mostly a puzzle game with some combat aspects. I did enjoy the combat for what it was, especially with the melee combat being, you know, the hit and dodge sort of ideal. And then the weapons were fun as well, but the combat really isn't the draw in this game. The draw is the story. The story is fantastic. It really makes you think, and I will happily admit I cried. I will happily admit I cried. None of this should really be a surprise if you know me, and if you don't know me, well, it says a lot about me. I've made an entire video talking about Silent Hill 2, so I won't stick on it for too long, and we'll move on to Outlast 2. Almost said 2-2 there. Outlast 2 is definitely weaker than the first Outlast. I played the first Outlast last year, if I remember correctly. It might have been the previous year. Time's been fucky wucky since about 2020, so... Personally, I didn't find it as atmospheric as some other horror games. There were definitely some moments which felt tense, but I really didn't feel as tense as some other horror games. I don't know if this is because this was like the third or fourth game I was playing this month, and I kind of got used to the horror feel. It really didn't make me feel too tense other than some other moments. The story was pretty creepy in some areas though, but I feel like it relied too much on body and gore horror, which is not my favorite type of horror, admittedly. And there were some really disgusting scenes, and especially kind of gross one towards the end where I had to kind of look away to not kind of feel sick. If that's your sort of thing, you'll definitely get an enjoyment out of this. Personally, that sort of gross body horror really isn't my sort of thing. which it does sound weird with Silent Hill 2 at the top there, because it does have some aspects of body horror, but not as much as Outlast 2. Outlast 2 just goes heavy ham on them and doesn't ever really slow down too much. The story, of course, similar to Outlast 1, doesn't really make too much sense. You're supposed to watch a 10-hour video afterwards explain it to you. I never got around to actually doing that, and I don't think I ever will, because I don't think the game interested me that much to really want to do that. So personally, I didn't really have much fun with this game at all. I don't think it was as good as the first one, or any other horror game. So let's go for a low B. I'm going to put it above Supermarket Simulator. I'm looking at this thinking I should put GTA 3 higher, which I probably will, but we'll do that at the end. Right, next up is I'm on observation duty, which is most of the name has been cut out by this. Whoops. This was a fun little game. It took me about 3 hours to complete both levels. I didn't 100% it, so if you want to 100% the game, you definitely can get a lot more hours out of this game. It's basically an anomaly search game where you got a building with like 5 or 6 cameras, and you got to search through them and find what has changed over the previous time. It took me a bit to work out. You kind of just learn what anomalies there are. I know there is 7 in the series now. I believe there's like 1 released every year at this point. It's a yearly game. Personally, I do want to play more of this series because it's a lot of fun, especially as they go into color later, so you can definitely see where the anomalies grow. It gets better graphics, that sort of thing. Some of the anomalies were funny. Some of them were very, very creepy as well. Personally, just a really good time. Nothing too special to really call it, but I personally had quite a bit of fun with this, and it was a fun little time to play. I'm happy to put this at bottom A. Nothing else more to really say. It was just a pretty good experience, a good indie game. Definitely one with a bit of rough edges, which I imagine probably gets sorted by the sequels coming out. And next up is Slay the Princess. This is the Pristine Cut edition, which came out in October this year, or was it November? I can't remember. Time goes too fast. I'm not 100% sure what the Pristine Cut brings. I know it brings some additional endings and some other features as well, but I didn't play the original edition. This was a free update to the original as well, so if you played it in the past, might be a reason to go back to it as well, I believe, or if you had it on your wish list. I definitely recommend this game. It's a really, really fun game. I really got attached to the characters, or I should say 2 of the characters. Like, one character is you, and then it's the princess and the narrator, and that's really all the characters are out in this game. It's a very simple make your choice game, but there's so many different variations. Just one choice at the start leading to so many different places, and then you make another choice and it leads to another area. There's so many different winding paths. All the endings are different, unlike Casting of Frank Stone, which is obviously another choices matters game. This was just really fun. The art style is really unique. It's this hand-drawn style, but like really rough hand-drawn style, but it really works well for kind of atmosphere it's going. There's some generally scary parts and scenes that kind of really give you the creeps. There's no jump scares or anything. It's just really scary to look at. But I think this is probably one of the better games I definitely played this year, and I had a lot of fun with it. I do want to go back at some point and get more of the endings. Whether I'll do that now or not is an entirely different thing. I think this one is really hard to place just because I think I got a lot of enjoyment based on the endings I did get on my first playthrough. But there is a lot of replayability to it. The art style's good. It's not really much gameplay. It's mostly just selecting text boxes and see what options, or see the consequences of your options. It's definitely a high A or low S, and it's really hard to pick where it goes. I'm going to put it just under Thank Goodness You're Here, but this could definitely go up a few or lower a few, maybe. Probably up a few. I'm picking between here, here, and here. I'm just going to put it here for now, and we'll get back around to it. Right, next up is Sonic X Shadow Generations. This was a really fun game, a fun remaster of the original Sonic Generations, as well as the additional Shadow Generations. You could definitely feel like this game was Shadow Generations, and then they decided to add the Sonic remaster on top of it. On the PC edition, when you open the Sonic Generations remaster, it opens up an entirely new program. Like the window closes and it opens up something new, so it kind of acts like a launcher. But when you use the Shadow Generations, it just launches straight into the game, so you can tell it's sort of a launcher for the Sonic Generations half, and the Shadow Generations is the meat of it. The Sonic Generations half is definitely the weaker half. I feel like the Act 1s weren't that amazing. I'm personally more a fan of the 3D sort of Sonic era, so Sonic Adventure, Sonic Heroes, that sort of thing. Those are the ones I personally enjoy playing in the Sonic series. The classic Sonic stages were fine, they were serviceable. I found that most of them kind of slowed you down a bit too much, and I kind of really didn't enjoy the Sonic Colors levels, if I'm going to be honest. Also, the final boss in the Sonic Generations is really boring, very uninteresting, and could have been improved because I heard it was pretty boring in the original as well, and I wish they took a bit more effort to kind of work on that one as well. The Shadow Generations half, though, really good. The stages are really good. There isn't really any 2D stages as 2D sections, but none of them are really fully 2D. The new abilities are cool, the wings are cool, the open world you get is really cool as well. I had a lot of fun with the Shadow half as well. So that Shadow half definitely brings it up and definitely carries it, if you ask me. If you never played Sonic Generations, you're probably going to have a lot of fun with the Sonic half as well. But personally, the Shadow half is really what shines here and what is the main meat of it all. Personally, I'm going to pit this as a low A. I think I'm going to pit it just above GTA 4 if it lets me. There we go. But yeah, it's a fun experience, and if you enjoy Sonic, you're probably going to enjoy this game. You're going to get more enjoyment out of it if you enjoy the 2D Sonic parts as well. But even in terms of 2D Sonic, I think it's weaker. I enjoyed Sonic Mania more. And next up is Balatro. I got really into this game for like a couple of weeks. I don't play as much as I did before, but I still do play it quite a bit. It's very fun to see those numbers go higher and higher and higher, to see what combos you can come up. I feel like the biggest downside of this game is the fact that every time you unlock a new Joker, you kind of dilute the pool of Jokers, and making certain strategies work is a lot harder to do because I rely more on luck. I would like to see something like a collection system from Vampire Survivors to make it so, oh, I don't want to see this Joker in my upcoming run, and you never see it coming up. Obviously, some form of progression unlock, that sort of thing. Maybe it exists, maybe you can unlock it later. I haven't unlocked all the decks yet either, so there's a lot of things I still need to unlock, and maybe I'm missing on one of those features. But personally, that's something I kind of struggled with, and one of the reasons why I'm struggling to kind of complete some of these decks, because I'm not really getting Jokers that fit with my my current builds in the runs. But overall, it's a really good game, probably one of the best indie games of this year. Really easy to get into, it's just a poker roguelike, and I don't think there's much more I can say about that, because it's a pretty simple game. Personally, I'm going to put it as a high A, but I definitely could move up to S if we move a few more of these up to S, which I might do, because this A category is getting a bit too full. It's got the same amount as B, where B is supposed to be the most full, but we'll get to that at the end. Right, next up is Code Vein. This is a Souls-like anime game from 2018, I believe. I might be misremembering. It's a fun experience with a lot of different weapons you can use, different builds you can use. It's very different from another Souls-like game because it kind of has these abilities that you're kind of required to use to actually beat a lot of these fights. I think the biggest issue I had with this game is towards the last 30%, they kind of just give up on making things hard with abilities and skill, and just throw a bunch of nonsense at you and hope you make your way through it. There's a lot of sections where there's like 3 melee enemies on you, and then like 3 ranged enemies on you, so if you dodge a melee, you instantly get shot by a ranged attack. There's a lot of places to fall off. It's just not a fun experience because it doesn't feel like the game's really challenging you. It's just asking, okay, either run through this area or work out a way to deal with some absolute bullshit. And this extends to bosses as well. Instead of them having areas where they have some downtime so you can heal or get some counter attack in, it feels like they're done with one attack, you get one attack in, and they're ready to hit you again, and you're constantly doing this battle of either blocking or dodging over and over again and barely getting anything done. If you do get hit during these and you go to heal, before the heal's even done, you're already getting hit again, so all that hit you just did is wasted, and you just want to heal again, and they still don't let you. I think one of the biggest issues is obviously the fact that if you go to heal, you actually have to do the full animation of heal every single time. So if you want to heal twice in a row, you have to do the full animation twice, whereas something in like Bloodborne or Dark Souls, you kind of have this quickened animation for doing it twice in a row in quick succession, which is something this game really could have used with. Personally, I found the story, I didn't even find it convoluted, I just found it plain and simple. You kind of have these sections where you go into memories of these characters that you don't really care about. I found none of the characters very interesting. I think the biggest draw for me was the combat. I had quite a lot of fun with the combat, but like I said, towards the last 30%, kind of came really frustrating. This isn't really a Souls-like I can really recommend to people too heavily because it just throws so much bullshit at you, really. For that reason, this is going to be the next C that we haven't seen in a while, and honestly, I'm going to put it just above Marvel Snap, because while Marvel Snap and Killer Clowns were games that were multiplayer games killed by potential, Cave Rain is just something killed by the game designers kind of just running out ideas and maybe should have ended the game sooner. Next up, it's Sonic Adventure. I really enjoyed Sonic Adventure. The levels were really fun. The game doesn't overstay its welcome. There isn't too many mini games in this one. There is the Chow Garden, but it's a weaker version of the Chow Garden versus Sonic Adventure 2, personally. But personally, it's a really good experience, one of the best Sonic games, and it is its transition into 3D. And personally, I just had a lot of fun with it. There's not much to say there. Personally, this is just an A tier Sonic game to me, maybe even S tier. We'll go for an S tier actually here, and not much to say. Next up is my controversial opinion that Sonic Adventure 2 is worse than the original. I found the Knuckles/Rouge levels very, very frustrating. The finding the Master Emerald parts just very, very frustrating. I found the Tails Eggman sections boring and just something to slog through, and I found that there wasn't really enough Sonic/Shadow levels to really get through. The final story doesn't have any checkpoints, so if you lose all your lives, you have to go back to the start all over again, which is very, very frustrating. The Chow Garden is better, I will give them that, and I didn't really hate the racing levels for Rouge and Tails too heavily, but they were very, very basic level racing levels. The biggest draw of this game is the fact that it has Shadow. Shadow's one of the best Sonic characters there is, there's no doubt in that. But personally, I found the story flowed a lot worse than the original Sonic Adventure. There's quite a lot of jumping around. The story misses some areas just to try and get you back into action a bit faster, which is kind of appreciated, but when the action is half of the time finding the Master Emeralds or shooting with Robotnik or Tails, it's just not a very fun experience to me. The good it has with the Sonic levels and the interesting character designs and some of the interesting level designs is great, but it kind of just becomes frustrating to a point when you complete a Sonic or Shadow level in 3-4 minutes and then you've got to fly around and search for Master Emeralds as Knuckles for 20 minutes. It's just not a fun experience to me, and honestly, this is a B level game at max, and I'm going to put it at the bottom of B, or maybe even high C. The fact that I didn't enjoy it was very disappointing to me, and I wish I did enjoy it, but I didn't, I'm afraid. And next up is the final game I've played this year, at least so far. I mean, there's still 10 days left. Maybe I'll pick something else new up. This is Marvel Rivals. I don't know why I picked the one without the title on it, but this is Marvel Rivals. I've been having a lot of fun with this game. Obviously, it's new. It could obviously go the same route as Marvel Snap or Killer Clowns, where it doesn't really take its potential and just focuses more on cosmetics and stuff. I kind of like the aspect of every character really being OP. No matter who you play, you do kind of feel like a superhero in a way. There's definitely improvements to be made. Some characters are definitely more powerful than others. Some limits to some ultimates, cough Jeff, could be used, because obviously eating up basically every other player in the game and then jumping off a cliff to also win a point is pretty frustrating, especially as there isn't too much skill involved other than the fact that, don't group up, but then you mix it with like a Groot ult or something like that, and there's a lot of frustrating aspects to it as well. But personally, I still have a lot of fun even despite these OP situations that you can find yourself in. It's definitely not the best game I've played this year, but I think in terms of multiplayer games that I've played this year, this is definitely the best multiplayer game I've played by far. I'm going to put this just above Rogue, personally. I think there's a lot of potential that this game can have. There's obviously been some leaked characters that could be really interesting, and there is a lot of characters they can choose from to add in. I do enjoy the fact they haven't picked just ones from the movies. Jeff the Land Shark, who's only been around for 6 years, Squirrel Girl, who's pretty well known in the community but never really appeared into a movie. That sort of thing. So I'm glad they're choosing characters from the comics as well, and not just MCU. This isn't just MCU, the fighting game. And I do like some of their spins and their own interpretations of some of the characters as well. One day I'll learn to play Spider-Man. Right, this has gone on for long enough. Like I said, there are a few games that didn't make this list because I didn't play them for long enough, or I finished them in other years, that sort of thing. Overall, I'm decently happy with this. I'm just having one final look over, and honestly, I'm going to bring GTA 3 up. Have an initial look. Um, I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, being A being the highest is the main thing here. Just look at the rest. I think I'm going to bring Shadow Generations up a little bit higher as well. But overall, I'm pretty happy with that. My game of the year being Silent Hill 2. Like I said, entire video on that. And yeah, that's just ranking every game I've played this year. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll do the stereotypical thing of like, comment, subscribe. Do what you want. I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully see you again soon.